Good morning. This is Dr. Tej Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics from Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. Today I am going to discuss the topic terms of trade and economic development, secular deterioration hypothesis from the subject of international economics. Economists like Mint, Nakase, Previs, Singer, Lewis, and Myrdal maintain that certain disequalizing forces have been operating in the world economy, as a result of which the gains from trade have gone mainly to the developed countries, leading to foreign exchange concentration. We shall mainly discuss the Previs-Singer hypothesis. The Previs-Singer thesis enunciates that the secular deterioration in terms of trade has been an important factor in inhibiting the growth of lower developed countries. The terms of trade between the peripheral, that is, lower developed countries, and the cyclical centers, that is, developed countries, have shifted in favor of the latter. Some assumptions are there. The previous Singer thesis is based on the following assumptions. Number one, on account of the operation of Engel's law as income rise in developed countries, the demand pattern shifts away from primary to manufactured products. Number two, demand for the primary products of lower developed countries rises slowly in developed countries. Next, export market for developed country products is monopolistic and that for lower developed countries product competitive. Fourth assumption is trade unions being weak and lower developed countries wages are low there. So are the prices of primary products which lead to declining terms of trade. Next assumption is substitutes for primary products of lower developed countries are appearing in the world which diminish the demand for them. Next is producers of manufactured products in developed countries do not pass on the benefit of increase in productivity through lower prices in lower developed countries. Income terms of trade is the determining factor for economic growth in lower developed countries. So, Prevish assumed that the capacity to import or income terms of trade is the determining factor of economic growth in lower developed countries, and the terms of trade is the most important conduit for transmission of productivity gains from cyclical centers, that is developed countries, to the peripheral countries, that is lower developed countries. His contention is that in the organic growth of the world economy, the primary producing lower developed countries have failed to share in the gain of this world economic growth generated by the developed countries. He points out on the basis of the United Kingdom's terms of trade with the lower developed countries that between the 1820s and the 1930s, there was secular downward trend in the prices of primary goods relative to the prices of manufactured goods. They give the following reasons for deterioration in the terms of trade of lower developed countries. So there are some important points uh, given by them. The first is technical progress. Technical progress increases the income of workers and entrepreneurs and a high price for their goods. Some of them are exported to the lower developed countries, but the benefits of technical progress do not flow to the lower developed countries. As a result, wages of workers do not rise. Prices of their primary goods which they export in relation to their imports fall, thereby worsening their terms of trade. This has been due to technical progress in raw material saving products like synthetic jute and rubber, rayon, etc., which have adversely affected the traditional exports of LDCs. Next point given by them, relation between incomes and productivity. According to Prevish, the income of entrepreneurs and productive factors increase relatively more than productivity in developed countries. The increase in incomes is less than that in productivity in lower developed countries for two reasons. The first reason is there population pressure. Population pressure in lower developed countries due to increase in population and surplus manpower have led to the rise in labor supply, which is absorbed mainly in those sectors where labor productivity is already very low. Consequently, the level of wages falls further. The next point is weak trade unions. Trade unions are mostly non-existent in the large unorganized sector of the lower developed countries, and where they exist, as in the organized sector, they are very weak. They are therefore incapable of raising wages for their workers. On the other hand, trade unions being very strong in developed countries are highly successful in raising wages of their members. So the main third point is there. Monopoly elements. The developed countries have a high degree of monopoly power in manufactured industrial and capital goods for which they charge high prices from lower developed countries. On the other hand, the world price of primary products of lower developed countries are low because they are not properly organized. As a result, the terms of trade have remained unfavorable for the lower developed countries. Next point is effects of cyclical instability and balance of payment difficulties. Prevish further points out that after the opening up of lower developed countries, the world markets, there has been phenomenal rise in their exports. But this has not contributed much to the development of the rest of the economy of these countries, as the export sector has developed to the utter neglect of the other sector of the economy. On the other hand, too much dependence on exports has exposed these economies to international fluctuation in the demand for and prices of their products. During a depression, the term of trade become adverse and foreign exchange earnings fall steeply. As a result, they suffer from unfavorable balance of payments. Similarly, they are unable to benefit from a boom in world market, an improvement in their terms of trade due to a boom not accompanied by an increase in output and employment due to market imperfections, inadequate overhead capital, and structural maladjustments. Next point is a debt problem of lower developed countries. Another reason which Singer advances for deterioration in terms of trade of lower developed countries in recent years has been their mounting debt. First, a large amount of proceeds from exports. The second point is there to repay their debt. Lower developed countries compete with each other to increase their export earnings. Next point is emerging growth. According to Bhagavati, emerging growth in lower developed countries leads to deterioration in the terms of trade of lower developed countries. When the economy's growth leads to the production of more exportable. And the second point is there the demand for exports is inelastic. And last point in this point is there growth reduces the domestic production of importable at constant commodity prices. Next, shortage of intermediate products. Linder points toward the shortage of intermediate products in lower developed countries as the cause for deterioration in their terms of trade due to the shortage of such products in relation to their expanding demand. They are imported at relatively higher prices than the prices of exportables. These prices differences results in deteriorating in terms of trade. Next point is weak bargaining power. Most of the primary products exported by lower developed countries to developed countries are perishable. So they have to accept the conditions laid down by the developed countries because of their weak bargaining power. The price and quantity condition for exports are always against the lower developed countries, which leads to worsening of their terms of trade. Next point, dependence on developed countries. Lower developed countries depend on developed countries for capital equipment, machinery, and know-how for their development of import substitution industries and infrastructure, etc. These are supplied at high prices as compared to their export prices, which worsen their terms of trade. But there are some criticisms of this theory. The criticism is there. The first criticism is not supported by empirical evidence. The secular deterioration thesis has not been proved correct by modern researcher made by Kindleberger, Ellsworth, Morgan, Haverler, and Lipsy. Further, Lipsy concludes in his study two widely held beliefs regarding net water terms of trade found no confirmation in the data for the United States. One is that there has been a substantial long term improvement in the terms of trade of developed countries, including the United States. The other, that there has been a significant long term deterioration in the terms of trade of primary as compared to the manufactured products. The second criticism is lower developed countries also export manufacturers. It is not correct to identify that all lower developed countries export primary products and all developed countries export manufacturers, because there are many lower developed countries like India that also export manufactured goods, and developed countries like Australia and Denmark also export primary products. So next criticism is monopolistic elements in developed countries not proved. The argument that monopolistic elements in the developed countries have kept the benefits of technical progress with themselves and have hurt the producers of primary products in lower developed countries has not been proved by any empirical evidence. Next criticism is Engel's law not applicable to raw materials. The contention that the operation of Engel's law tends to reduce securely the demand of developed countries for primary products has been exaggerated because this law applies to food and not to raw materials. Next, neglect of supply conditions. The previous Singer thesis discuss only demand condition and ignore supply conditions in determining terms of trade. But relative prices depend not only on demand but also on supply conditions, which are likely to change much over long periods. Next criticism is lower developed countries benefit from foreign investments. According to the Freddie Mehta, the terms of trade is not the most important determinant of economic development. Though productivity gains have not been passed on the lower developed countries in the form of low-priced manufacturers, yet they have been passed on to them in the form of product improvement, product invention, and product diversification. They have actually benefited from foreign investments. The next criticism is there not possible to assess changes in demand of primary products. It is unreasonable to infer from the conditions of 1870 to 1930 that there has been a secular deterioration in the terms of trade of lower developed countries due to the declining world demand for their primary products. Tremendous changes have taken place in methods of production and transportation in world production and trade, and in world population and standards of living since 1870. Next criticism is export instability not due to price change alone. According to McBean, export instability in lower developed countries seems to arise from quantity fluctuation than from changes in prices. Next criticism is weak policy measures. As a policy measures, Prevish suggests protection while Singer favors better utilization of foreign capital. The policy measures are weak because they fail to emphasize the importance of export promotion, import substitution, and monetary and fiscal measures to correct the terms of trade. So, these were the some criticisms of this theory, but in concluding part, we can uh, we can conclude it in a way that discussion have been going on among economists about deterioration or otherwise of the terms of trade of lower developed countries. Two UNCTAD studies between 1950 to 1961 and 1960 to 1973 show a relative decline in terms of trade of lower developed countries in relation to developed countries. Similarly, Thurwell and were given in their study between 1973 to 82 for all primary commodity exports from lower developed countries have shown 0.36% annual trend deterioration in their terms of trade. Singer and Sarkar analyzed the terms of trade for export of manufactures by lower developed countries which service developed countries from 1970 to 87 and find that the decline in their terms of trade has been approximately 1% per annum. It appears therefore that the developing countries suffer double jeopardy. Not only do the prices of their primary products decline relative to manufactured goods, but also the prices of these manufactured export decline of their relative to those of developed countries, reflecting no doubt the commodity composition of their exports. There is little doubt that over the decade of the 1980s, world price of primary products fall sharply and the terms of trade of lower developed countries declined between 1980 to 1993 as revealed by the World Development Report 1995. We may conclude with stating that there are still forces at work that for an uneven distribution of gains from trade and economic progress generally, so that the loin shares goes to the loin while the poor lambs themselves are swelled up in the process. Thank you. Thank you very much.